Welcome everybody to our Thursday, February 4th Marin Energy Authority board meeting. We conducted a closed session with our legal counsel discussing anticipated litigation, and direction was given and dialogue was taken with counsel, and we have nothing further to report at this time on that matter. First item up then is public open time. Is there anyone who wishes to address us about an item that's not on tonight's agenda? Seeing no one rise, we'll go to the director's report. Dawn?
Good evening, directors. I have a couple of items this evening. I wanted to let folks know that there was a meeting held last night in Fairfax Council where the idea of providing security, additional security for some of MEA's implementation loan was discussed, and there was a direction given to their city manager that they'll explore that further with us. So we've been in discussions today, and we'll have more to report on that soon.
It's great. Yeah. It's really great at Fairfax. Thank you.
You want to add anything, Dr. Tremaine?
Just that it was done on a unanimous vote, and I think it just shows our town's level of support for this endeavor. So.
It's awesome.
Great.
Item 4 is a request for us to approve resolution number 2010-01 honoring Mr. Chris Martin. Chris, would you like to approach the podium, please? Chris, we intend to embarrass you only slightly. But we very much want to honor and thank you for your service to the Marin Energy Authority over this past year, and just register our sincere sorrow that you won't be able to continue working with us. So the resolution that is being proposed asks us to honor you, whereas the Marin Energy Authority is a joint powers authority established on December 19th, 2008, and organized under the Joint Exercise of Powers Act under Government Code of State Law. The Town of Ross executed the Joint Powers Agreement establishing its membership in the Marin Energy Authority on December 11 of 08, and you, Chris, were appointed to represent the Town of Ross on our Board of Directors. You exhibited great enthusiasm around windmills and other potential projects for renewable energy, with the business acumen of an experienced financier, but the joy of a boy with a cool new toy. And you were an excellent carpool driver, navigator, and methane gas humorist, driving through the farmlands of Solano County. And you were steadfast in your support of MEA's goals, always generous with your time, business expertise, and objective analysis of the issues. And your dedication and devotion to MEA was exemplified through your participation and commitment to MEA's technical committee, and we, your colleagues, will sorely miss your tweed jackets, good company, and your significant contributions. We therefore wish to resolve that, and with our staff, that we do intend to call on you to stay with us and to plug in other ways to support our efforts. We pass and adopt this resolution at a regular meeting of our Authority Board of Directors this evening. Can I ask for a second on that item?
Second.
Is there any opposition to approving this resolution?
Do I get to give a comment?
As soon as I hand it to you. Hearing no opposition, that carries.
You know, given that Ross withdrew from this wonderful effort, it should be pink, a pink note. I do wear on occasion my father's old tweed coat, and but I want to defer any comment about the methane gas generation. I'm not an expert on that, but I would like to thank all of you for the resolution, and more significantly for involving me in the MEA efforts. It's truly a worthwhile endeavor. It's an uphill battle. PG&E is a formidable opponent, preserving its Northern California monopoly at whatever cost. Ross, the town I represent, unfortunately withdrew from the MEA, but it did so on a very narrow vote. It was 3-2. And the swing vote stated that he would like to reconsider joining the MEA once it was up and running. If, however, the statewide initiative on the June ballot that PG&E is spending millions of dollars crafting and furthering, if that passes, it will make it impossible for Ross, as well as many other communities, all communities across the state, from joining a community choice aggregation program. Unfortunately, PG&E seems to be reliving a page from its past. Its tactics to rub out community choice aggregation mirror the bleakest days of San Francisco's history, when city boss Abe Roof had a political machine that controlled the Board of Supervisors of San Francisco, the Chief of Police, and several judges as well. It was during this period, shortly after the 1906 earthquake and the devastating fire that leveled San Francisco, that 16 of the 18 members of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors confessed to a grand jury that they had taken bribes from Abe Roof and PG&E. I am optimistic that the June initiative will be defeated by the people of California, who, despite the millions of dollars that PG&E and other utilities will spend, realize that competition and freedom of choice is the foundation of our economy and our democratic society. I'm also optimistic that the MEA will be successful with its endeavors and be of public benefit for generations to Marin County and its citizens. Thank you for this resolution, and I'll be on the sidelines active.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Very good. With that, we'll move to item number 5, which is proposed approval of our power purchase agreement with Shell Energy North America. Don?
Thank you. So just to give a little background, on May 7th, your board approved and released a request for proposal for full requirements electricity supply to provide electricity for a community choice aggregation program. This competitive solicitation process resulted in 12 bids, which were evaluated and narrowed down to 3 full requirements bidders. We then set out to negotiate a draft contract, which was released publicly in early October for a draft period of review among all of our member agencies. We received a lot of input during that time, which was incorporated into the final draft, which was approved by your board on November 5th. Since that time, the draft contract has been undergoing a 90-day review period. We've been meeting multiple times with many of our member agencies, cities, towns, and the county, and sharing information about what is included in the draft. And just as a reminder, a couple of the key provisions in there are that the supplier would be required to provide 25%, a minimum of 25% renewable energy content. That would be the default service option for all participating customers. They would also be required to provide a 100% renewable energy product to customers for as many customers as choose that product. The length of service is 5 years, and if your board approves the attached contract and authorizes the chair to execute the contract, service to Phase 1 customers for the MEA program can begin to customers as early as May of this year. A couple of other provisions I'd like to call out. The Deep Green program will be offered at a slight premium, which is estimated to come in at between $3 and $6 per month for an average residential customer. And we've also included one change in the contract, which I want to highlight this evening. This is an addition. that's called, it's 2.3, and it's called carbon neutral energy. This is a requirement that the seller shall provide carbon neutral energy to the buyer in an amount not less than 53% of total energy deliveries for the period of delivery, and that if the carbon content of such energy is equal to or less than the carbon content of energy supplied by our incumbent utility in the North Pass service territory. So this is one addition to the confirmation, but the substance of the remaining text remains essentially the same.
Great. Chair, members of the board, let me direct the CEQA questions that have come up during our consideration of the contract. And in particular, there was a letter submitted by PG&E during the comment period that we had provided for, and also another letter after the comment period from a resident from Nevada, which focused on the same issue of whether or not Marine Clean Energy will be emitting more greenhouse gases than PG&E over the next 5-year term. And just a little backdrop here, one thing is back in November, when we first came to the board with staff's initial recommendation on how to treat this project under CEQA, there was a recommendation to rely upon 2 categorical exemptions. One was under 15308, which was the Class 8 regulatory exemption, and the other was the 15061B3 exemption, where you can determine with certainty there will be no adverse environmental effects. Since that time, that recommendation was made, staff had received information from the PUC and consulted with PUC staff with respect to how power purchase agreements are treated by the PUC, which we thought would be a highly relevant piece of information to share with the board. And what we discovered was that power purchase agreements, including many entered into by PG&E over a period of time, as recently as last year, had no CEQA review at all. And the reason is these are market purchases of electricity and do not involve construction of new facilities. And that is precisely the type of contract that is before you this evening. The contract says there will be no new construction, that the energy will come from existing facilities. So it is a market-based purchase agreement. So as we looked at how the PUC treated this issue, and I had discussions with their legal counsel, who was surprised, in fact, that this issue had come up during our proceedings here, that CEQA would apply to a power purchase agreement. We looked at this issue, whether or not this is even a project in the first place. And for that reason, staff is now recommending that there really be a 3-step process here taken by the board in considering the application of CEQA to this activity here, this contract. And the first would be to determine that the contract is not a project under CEQA. But if it is, it's exempt. And it is exempt under the 2 exemptions that were previously recommended to you by staff back in November. The one thing I would like to emphasize and build upon here in terms of the presentation this evening regarding the new condition added to the contract, and this was really a very important one. We've had an ongoing debate about who's greener over the next 5 years, and I think information that staff has presented to the board has been clearly that Marine Clean Energy will be much greener than PG&E over that 5-year period. That's been disputed. And we can continue that dispute, and we thought, really, rather than doing that, it would be much clearer to have an ironclad guarantee in the contract that would prevent the greenhouse gas emissions of Marine Clean Energy ever exceeding those of PG&E, and we still expect they'll be much better, but in no case will they be worse. And the way this has been designed, because you never know from year to year what conditions may occur, is that for some reason in a given year, that the emissions from Marin Clean Energy had more carbon than PG&E. There then is a required 90-day period within which Marin Clean Energy must purchase what are called environmental products, that be carbon offsets or other environmental offsets to offset any excess carbon over PG&E in that year. That's not expected. That's the final foolproof aspect of this condition, to absolutely guarantee that under all circumstances, the carbon contact of the energy produced by Marin Clean Energy will not exceed PG&E. So that is now, we believe, an important part of the contract, and really should put to rest this whole dispute over whether or not Marin Clean Energy would ever have greenhouse gases in excess of PG&E. I'd also like to add, in the comment letter from PG&E, there was this reference that their projections over the 5 years were the CEQA baseline. And that's an inaccurate reference here, because we do talk about baselines in CEQA, which we measure environmental effects against. But those are, the baseline is always actual conditions. And the only actual conditions that we have, frankly, are those conditions today. And under those current conditions, frankly, PG&E is not currently meeting the 20% standard set by the state for renewable energy. In terms of looking down the road, those are projections. And frankly, whether we make projections or they make projections, they're only estimates and projections. So that is not a baseline. That is simply what PG&E is estimating may occur down the road. And we don't know what it'll be, but the way the condition has been worded, it doesn't matter, because whether they continue to emit less greenhouse gases or they emit more, we're always going to have to be at or below those levels. So again, we're very satisfied with the condition that has been worked out with Shell. It took a fair amount of time to work this out, to make sure it was correctly drafted, and now has been presented for your consideration. I don't think there's a need to go into other details of the report. The report does address the various other objections that have been made by PG&E, and also, in effect, also address the issues raised by the resident commenter who just made a comment here this last week. So our recommendation to the board is set forth in the staff report. It consists of two parts. The first part, when you get time to actually consider the contract and take action on it, would be the first steps are to make the environmental determinations. And once you make the environmental determinations as recommended, those three parts, series of steps you'll take. The last part will be to actually approve the contract, but then it directs the chair and interim director to provide for the execution of the contract once prices are determined to meet the resolution previously adopted by the board. Have any questions? I'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Collins?
Yeah, the CEQA, the three CEQA points that will be made as part of the motion, those would be part of the motion that's binding?
Yes, those would be your determination, basically, of how you are actually treating this contract under CEQA. And so we would want to address each of those 3 points.
And the provision in this contract that makes it clear that there will be no construction under the contract,
yes,
does not preclude endeavors that this agency might take to create assets in the community or its whereabouts that would come under full CEQA review at the time that they were defined and developed.
That's precisely right. So any new facilities that were to be developed by the authority itself would be under CEQA review at that time. And likewise, even if Shell had opportunities for some new renewable facilities, that facility would have to go through CEQA review before that could be something that could be provided to us as part of this contract. So again, it doesn't preclude any new facilities, new renewables. It just says that right now, all of our demand can be met with existing facilities. There will be no new construction required. And if any new construction does happen to take place in the future, it must be fully compliant with CEQA at that time.
Great, thank you.
Any other directors right now? I just want to make one comment, Greg. I am very happy with the additional provision in the contract. But I just want to say for the record that I think that the argument that has been put forward by PG&E that nuclear and large hydro is non-carbon is garbage, is bogus. And I continue to feel great revulsion at the canard that the life cycle impacts of nuclear power are somehow carbon-free. That's just a joke. When you mine uranium, you process uranium, you ship it, and then you store it for perhaps 500,000 years, the notion that nuclear power is carbon-free is just patently absurd on its face. But that's the game that PG&E is trying to trap us with. I think that the consulting analysis that leads to those kinds of claims is frankly shameful. Similarly, large hydro projects destroy entire ecosystems. And so there's literature extant out there on the web and other places in libraries that talks about the life cycle carbon emissions from flooding entire ecosystems. And so the notion that large hydro projects are truly carbon-free, I think, is also fairly bogus. But once again, this agency is fighting fire with fire, and we're stepping up and we're going to meet and beat all of those types of ploys that PG&E is using in its purposeful campaign to destroy this public agency and the will of the representatives that put us to work here. So I just wanted to get that on the record, frankly, but we'll meet it and we'll beat those terms, and We'll utilize their accounting procedures to beat them at that game, and I appreciate the hard work that's gone into getting this contract provision added so that we have a guarantee now.
Yeah, maybe a quick related point to that, Greg. I find it significant that there's no dispute that PG&E will not meet its legal renewable portfolio standards. In fact, it'll fall quite short of those. I imagine that a court evaluating the balances here will find that very significant. Is that true?
Yes, I agree.
Also, what about the fact that, and again, this presupposes that PG&E will be the party bringing a potential CEQA challenge to our project. What about the fact that it appears that PG&E is essentially motivated to protect its monopoly position in the market, meaning really at the heart of it, they're preserving their economic self-interest? Would that be significant?
That can be a very significant factor with respect to standing to bring a CEQA suit.
Okay.
Other directors? Okay. So do we go back to Don to take us through any more of the contract, or do we just entertain public comment and motions and so forth?
Yes, public comment is the time for that right now. Would be perfect.
Great. Members of the public, anyone wishing to speak to us about the contract? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Garrett Stone. The company is Aspire Corp. And I have some amount of background in renewable energy, as we talked about before. But I just had a simple question that I was interested in broaching, and then you broached the subject. So I'd like to ask you about the points you were just speaking to, which you have a large amount of energy on. So let me try and ask the question carefully so as not to ignite that fuse. But what my question was, Charles, was just whether there's a level playing field. I have never understood why, under California law, large hydro is not included as renewable. But your comments suggested certainly what the answer, I guess, is. But is MEA going to play by the same rules? Are you also excluding large hydro and nuclear?
The light green. Oh wait, we shouldn't get into dialogue right here. Let me capture your question, then we'll ask staff to
my
address
core point is it ought to be a level playing field, and if you're going to hold PG&E to certain rules and regulations, then I would assume and expect and anticipate that MEA would play by the same rules.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good. Thanks.
Gene Dyer from Santa Fe. Just a procedural question. You had a request for proposal that came in, and presumably there have been some negotiations since then. Now I see there's some additional things added. Does this mean that what you have on the table before you has been agreed by the other party, and if you sign it, will they immediately sign it?
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the contract? Very good. I'll bring it back to the board, and then. Oh wait, welcome, Barbara.
I just wanted to say thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Actually, yeah, let's turn that around.
Thank you.
Thank you. We wouldn't be here without a lot of advocacy from you all. Doug, did you want to address the question about the level playing field issue? I was going to start getting into our light green and the reason. Let me just start the response, if I may, and then I'll turn it to Don.
He can't resist.
Well, the legislature defined what qualifying renewable is. And so they went through a very detailed conversation that decided that for various reasons, including the one I mentioned about life cycle impacts and other habitat impacts, that it wouldn't be fair to call large hydro or nuclear qualifying renewable power. So our light green product and our deep green product won't have our light green product will have 25% qualifying renewable. In other words, not including nuclear or large hydro. Our deep green will have none of that either. It will also have no coal nor nuclear because this board has passed policy on those things. That said, though, what Mr. Stepanisic was getting at with respect to our CEQA deliberations, I'll ask Dawn and Greg to kind of answer that, because that gets into a different type of counterpoint that we've been locked in with PG&E for the last couple of months. And the short answer to your question is it will be a level playing field. To the extent that we count our beans, we'll be counting them the same way that PG&E does.
Yeah. Do you want me to elaborate on that?
Sure.
Okay. So we, because of the kind of the realities of the energy market, there will be a need for us to, we'll be able to specify some of our specific energy assets, where they'll be coming from. And we'll do that up to a point. We might want to do that up to about 85–90%, but we don't want to overbuy in our specifying of resources. So for the top portion, in order to kind of even out the volumes and the load, we will need to use some of the system power that's available. System power is used by PG&E, it's used by the utilities throughout California to balance out their power, and you can't control what's in the system power mix. So even going back to when we issued our RFP, we had a caveat in there stating that no nuclear or coal power would be selected as a specific asset that we would put into our power mix, but we would allow some system power to allow for balancing out of the load. So when we're calculating greenhouse gas emissions, we'll be, as we're doing our beam counting, there may be some large hydro and nuclear that's in the system power mix. Of course, that would have to be counted and would go in to the calculation. That was the question.
Good. Thank you, Don.
And it would be calculated in the same way that PG&E calculates it. So that creates the level playing field.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it would be subject to the true-up period at the end of the year.
Yes.
So, directors, other questions on the contract or comments that you'd like to make as we get ready to call a question?
Just that staff did a spectacular job putting it together. All hands that worked on it are to be congratulated. The committee that worked to negotiate did a beautiful job, and I'm happy with what we've got, and I think it gives us a real strong position to move forward and succeed wildly.
Other directors in this direction? Director Thornton?
I would also like to thank a lot of members of the public who helped us get to this point with all of their input, their reviewing it, analysis, and suggestions that help make it even stronger.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair, anything? No? Directors?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all of you who have put in a lot of hard work, both in the board and public. I think it's been a tremendous accomplishment. And it shows how grassroots issues can rise up, take a life of their own, and solve problems. And that really is what I think this authority and the staff have done here. It's very admirable. And it also, on the flip side of that, shows the power of competition and how competition sometimes can correct a couple of different problems at the same time in a beneficial way, socially.
With all the congratulations, I think we need to realize that we are still a long way from accomplishing this goal. And given the stance of PG&E, we still need all of your support and all of your assistance, because we still have a long way to go before this is a reality.
Thank you, Director. Director Connell?
Very strong first step. We couldn't have done it without the public, a great staff. Congratulations are in order to everyone, and we really have the opportunity to be innovative here, and it's an exciting moment. We're going into it with our eyes open. We know there's going to be a lot of challenge, but I think we're up to the task.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Ditto.
So I'll try to tie a bow on just by saying that we've been rushing here in 7 short years, and there has been a ton of hard work from members of the community and citizens who have helped us review stuff, who stood up and have offered thousands of hours of their personal time to this effort in repeated showdowns in council chambers and boardrooms. And so I just want to really thank the members of the public that are helping us keep our eye on the ball and error checking to make sure we get the best thing possible out of this. And then, of course, to staff and my colleagues on the board, I just can't, and our experts, I can't thank you all enough. This is a very momentous occasion. I think Director Cromwell raises a good point. I think the next 5 months are going to feel just as hard as the last 7 years have been. And so with great soberness and sort of deep sense of commitment, I'm happy to call the question on approving the contract and making the CEQA declarations as appropriate.
We may want to take this in two steps.
Okay.
The first step would be the CEQA determinations and the staff recommendation on CEQA, which would be the motion first to be taken by the board. Would be number one, the contract does not constitute a project as defined by CEQA, and even if the contract is a project, it would be exempt from CEQA for the following separate independent basis. The contract is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3 because it is covered by the general rule that CEQA only applies to projects that have the potential for causing a significant impact on the environment. And it can be seen with certainty that there is no possibility that the contract may have a significant effect on the environment. And the authority acting in a regulatory capacity drafted the contract to serve as a regulation for the protection of natural resources and specifically to reduce greenhouse gas production and resulting impacts to natural resources resulting from climate change.
I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll move for approval of the CEQA findings.
Second.
Refer to the vice chair.
Any other board discussion? Any opposition? That passes unanimously.
The next motion would be the recommendation of staff to approve the final SENA MEA EEI Master Power Purchase and Sale Agreement, cover sheet and confirmation to provide electric power supply services to serve retail electric customers that will participate in the Marin Clean Energy Program, and authorize the chair to execute the contract subject to final pricing from the supplier that is in compliance with resolution number 2009-07.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Let's see, Dawn or Jamie, would you help me do a roll call? We'd like to register a roll call vote on this one.
That's a good idea just because of the voting requirements for this particular contract.
All right, so calling roll, Director Cromwell,
Aye.
Director Tremaine,
Aye.
Director McGlashan,
Aye.
Director Marshall,
Aye.
Director Martin. Oops, sorry.
Sorry, dude. What would you do, though, if you could? Yes.
Director Thornton,
Aye.
Director Connolly,
Aye.
Director Leone,
Aye.
and Director Slavitt.
Yes.
Let the record show that that passed unanimously. Congratulations, everybody. Okay, we're to item 14, which would be board member announcements. Director Marshall.
Great. It's actually not an announcement. It's really just kind of a sum up, I think, of the evening for me. I didn't have much to say earlier when we approved the contract, but I would like to just again thank all of the advocates in this room. You know who you are. There are many more who are out there. If you would please pass along our thanks in any way that you can. And I would also like to say that now that we are through this hurdle, we have a lot more work to do internally. We know what that is. So I'm really going to ask the advocate community and all the members of the public to help us communicate the reality of Marin Clean Energy and, help correct misinformation wherever you can, as you have been doing, and let us all get out there and fight this ballot measure, because that really has to be our next focus if we're going to be successful for the whole program in the long term. So I'm really hoping that we can just set you loose now and go forth and do that. So, and I just, again, want to say thank you for helping us get here.
Other board matters? I'll do a couple quickly. The first that I want to address kind of relates to what Director Marshall just raised. There's a glossy flyer going out from the Common Sense Coalition, Common Sense Marin. And I just want to warn folks that this is coming from PG&E, and it's basically a hit piece on the Marin Energy Authority. And it quotes different entities, one of whom has admitted publicly, Michael Smith, the county treasurer, has admitted publicly that he has not done the reading and did not carefully analyze our materials. And our own Director Cromwell had a great little letter in the ARC newspaper just recommending that people really seriously read the information before they make dangerous public comments. And one of my colleagues in the boardroom took this other elected official to task for kind of spouting off without having done thorough homework. And as my colleagues here on this board know, this is an extraordinarily complex matter, and it's really inappropriate to kind of resort to these kinds of grotesque political tactics to try to scare people into misunderstanding something that's really complicated and that requires a lot of thought and care in how it's analyzed and how it's discussed. So I just wanted to make sure we got that on the record, that this agency will continue to, and I just really want to affirm staff's, and particularly our director, Don Wise's, absolute meticulous attention to detail and accuracy. Every time I've seen Don, articulate answers, it's been very fair and unbiased and fact-based. And I know this agency will continue to do that in sharp contrast to this kind of junk. The other thing I wanted to do is just read something that I found fairly inspiring. A couple days ago, as you know, we had a major decision to make at the Marin County Board whether to co-sign the bank loan. And we got a pretty powerful letter from the executive director of the United States Sierra Club, just asking us to support the implementation. And he goes on to say, clean energy solutions and climate change are top national priorities for the Sierra Club. Local leadership on these issues is vital, and programs like Marin Clean Energy lead the way for other communities. We're counting on you to demonstrate that local clean and affordable energy programs can be successful. Thank you for your support of this visionary plan. And I think it goes without saying that our leaders among staff, and especially our director, Don Wise, and this board, and everybody who's been supporting this project is exemplifying the kind of local leadership on urgent national policy that Carl Pope, the executive director of the Sierra Club, is referring to. So this one made me proud, and I think citizens of Marin ought to be proud to get a letter like this into the record. Very good. Anything further for the good of the order?
Well, Charles, let me just say, I'm only the alternate, so I haven't been saying much, but, as a member of the public, I want to thank all of you board members. You put in, I can see, an incredible amount of time, unpaid, and to make a huge change in our little county. And as a member of the public, I want to say it's unfortunate how adversarial it's been between PG&E and MEA. And I really hope 5 years from now, when this contract reaches its end and it's all up for discussion again, that goes away. Because, this is the future. Whether it's, the State of the Union address from President Obama, in the Chronicle today, there was something about electricity 2.0. I think that this is the future. And whatever PG&E is doing is kind of like, trying to push the tide back. This is going to happen. And it's too bad there's not a way that you can embrace this and help it along instead of trying to slow it down. So I want to thank you for what you've done, and I'm very optimistic about the future. And good luck. It's been great to be a part of this.
Thank you, Director.
Just to amplify on the director's comments, I have been wanting to make this point for a couple of months now. In my home state of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania Power and Light is actually sending out lists of alternative folks, alternative energy companies that their customers can transfer to, because because Pennsylvania Power and Light is looking to just be in the transmission business. And I look at that and I think, boy, wouldn't CCAs go over well in Pennsylvania right about now?
That's a
and
sea change
and
in
it's
Pennsylvania.
well, yeah, and so and I look at the situation that we're in, and I shake my head, and I think, what the hell is PG&E thinking? They are made basically in the transmission business, and why not go there? And I don't understand all of legal sabers and histrionics and hit mail pieces. It's just, it doesn't need to be this way. It doesn't need to be this way. At the end of the day, we have to work together. And so to begin, you know, hitting each other over the head with trucks in the sandbox at this point is just foolish. And, you know, it needs to stop. It just needs to stop.
Any staff matters? Very good. Then we will adjourn. See you next month, everybody. Thank you.